Hi, thanks for tuning into my official YouTube channel. I'm Reverend MeeLing, also known as Reverend Susan MeeLing, Lady Dori, Belle. Been known by a few names. So, I feel like going where I feel like going, and since I am able to do so, because, well, of many different reasons, I won't go where I'm gonna go. And so, I had found something in my apartment that shouldn't have been in my apartment because I mailed it. And when I say I mailed it, I mean I paid for it to be mailed to where it should have gone, and I shouldn't have had it in my apartment ever. And so, however, that particular note that I had mailed with the books to my daughter months ago should never have been in my apartment, because I mailed it through Amazon. So, and that was after having received a set of messages from my daughter. Now, my mistake for forgetting about how my niece from Susie Marie Nichols Lopez, Brieanna Marie Lopez, had put the phone to my daughter's ear after what was already occurring because of the stuff at McCoy Elementary School, which had a voicemail from my daughter's dead father, my dead ex-husband. And so, of course, my daughter was already dealing with stuff because of McCoy Elementary School of Carrollton, Texas, of Carrollton Farmers Branch Independent School District. My niece, Brieanna Marie Lopez, was old enough to know better, smart enough to know better than to purposefully do something like that to my daughter. It realistically wasn't that difficult for understanding. Well, obviously my daughter did not handle that well. And so shortly afterwards, another trip for my daughter to another hospital stay. That particular event had occurred in between the time where my daughter was in the Lyons Behavioral Health School after having been released from the hospital to go to the behavioral school. So, I don't know what sort of garbage as far as excuses, because it's just excuses. If, for example, my ex-sister-in-law, Mary Evangelina Nichols Osteen, and her daughters, Sandra Marie and Ariel Marie Osteen, didn't get over the fact that, first and foremost, they were never in my life to begin with. I mean, they were in 3 separate situations, and that was it. Nothing more. I didn't actually get to know my ex-sister-in-law, Mary Evangelina Nichols Osteen, until after. I mean, I got to meet her once while, married to my now dead ex-husband. but I didn't get to know her until after his death. We didn't hang out before then. We didn't talk on the phone. We weren't friends. I knew Susie Marie Nichols Lopez more than I ever knew Mary Evangelina Nichols Osteen. So if Mary Evangelina Nichols Osteen and her two daughters, Sandra Marie Osteen and Ariel Marie Osteen, couldn't get over the fact that I wasn't in their lives to begin with, except for the one time I got to meet them when, just by coinkydink, my military ID, the original one, went missing when they were nearby. Just saying, it's just some weird coinkydink that I had no problem keeping a track of it until they were in my car. My Ford Windstar. And so, if Mary Evangelina Nichols Osteen, which I had no desire to actually get to know, I mean, realistically, she just annoyed me with that fake garbage that she tried to say that she was a true Georgian, which, again, I've said this before, I'll say it again, probably not just in this official YouTube video, but I'll probably say it again in other official YouTube videos, as well as any discussions I might have. Mary Evangelina Nichols Osteen doesn't know what it's like to be a Georgian. Why? Just because she moved there and is a transplant doesn't make her a Georgian. That's realistic. And the fake Southern accent that she had from Georgia, that she claimed was Georgian, you know, first off, she wasn't even born in Georgia. She wasn't raised in Georgia. She moved to Georgia as an adult. So for her to have such a thick accent was really difficult to be around. The only time I met her before the death of my now dead ex-husband. And back then, I told her she didn't want to say certain things because I could feel as though actual Georgians would be upset by that. And not saying that Louisianans and Georgians can't get along. However, what I am saying is that Georgians probably don't want Louisianans who are born and raised in Louisiana until their teenage years to claim that they are a Georgian through and through. Especially when there was a time in between Louisiana and Georgia of living in the state of Texas. And even still, I would highly doubt that Louisianans wouldn't be offended by someone as Mary Evangelina Nichols Osteen claiming to be a Georgian when being an actual Louisianan. I would guesstimate they'd actually be offended, meaning Louisianans would actually be offended by someone as Mary Evangelina Nichols Osteen growing up there after being born there and then claiming to be from another state. And then I could also see Texans being like, what are we, chopped liver? You lived here for, you know, a couple of months or a couple of years and you don't even want to acknowledge that? Although at the same time, I could see Texans being like, well, you know, that's a double, you know, don't have to claim that much from that one. All right, you know. And so I have personally never denied being born and raised in New Jersey. I have never denied living in the state of Illinois for the little bit of time once I remembered I had lived in Illinois. Because, well, I was there in Illinois for less than, by technicalities, less than 2 years. It was like a year and a half that I had lived in Illinois. And the time that I lived in Illinois was just before my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000 when I was in basic training. And the subarachnoid hemorrhage and coma and headaches and migraines that came from that, with memory deficits and cognitive disorders, and having gone from college algebra with trigonometry and calculus to second grade math. So, where, I understand that there were plenty of Illinoisans who were upset with me for not remembering that I lived in Illinois. They didn't take into, not all of them, some of them took that into consideration, but there were a bunch that didn't take into consideration. I didn't live in Illinois that long, and I had a head injury. I was in a coma. I had a subarachnoid hemorrhage in the frontal lobe of my brain. However, there were a whole bunch of Texans that understood that far more. And then, I wasn't rude when I lived in the state of Texas. I thought I would be rude if I were to say that I was a Texan. I re-grew up in the state of Texas. I never denied that. I gave Texas the credit where credit is due. I never denied that I didn't wake up in Texas. I never denied living in Texas for many years. But I also didn't try to New Jerseyfy or Illinoisify the state of Texas at all. No, I knew better than that. I mean, I did have a head injury, but I didn't need a head injury to figure out. Do not try to New Jerseyfy or Illinoisify the state of Texas. Just saying. Just gonna throw that out there. Unlike my biological mother and biological sister. That being said, my ex-sister-in-law, Susie Marie Nichols Lopez, she didn't see anything wrong with what her daughter, Brieanna Marie Lopez, had done. She didn't see anything wrong with knowing my daughter had been in the hospital for mental health because of her being bullied at the school. She didn't know to the level that my daughter was being bullied. However, she did know my daughter was being bullied because she had picked up my daughter from one of the district therapy meetings. So it's not like Susie Marie Nichols Lopez had no idea whatsoever. She actually did. She didn't know to the level it was at. There's no denying that. Her brother, my ex-brother-in-law, Tony Walker Nichols in Oklahoma, he, despite not speaking with nearly as often, but I did take my son and my daughter out to see him and his wife and her daughters. I did do that. I drove from Texas to Oklahoma so that way they could spend time with their Uncle Tony. I kind of wish I had moved to Oklahoma instead in certain references because of some things that I was dealing with. However, I did make that attempt. I did do everything I could, which annoyed Susie Marie Nichols Lopez that I would do that. Because for whatever excuse, she seemed to think that she had more rights to me, which she didn't have any rights to me. Just like Mary Evangelina Nichols Osteen seemed to think that she had rights that she never had. Just because she had convinced my now dead ex-husband to put himself in my life and not get out of my life at those times doesn't mean at all, in any way, shape, or form, that I was theirs. Was I married legally to my now dead ex-husband? Yeah. I didn't want to be, though. And for those who don't understand why I didn't want to be, but had legally got married to my now dead ex-husband before the final separation, before his death, I had literally been forced at gunpoint. Literally. I still love my son and my daughter because I gave birth to them. I carried them in my womb. I raised them. I did everything I possibly could for them, despite how that came about and how that came to be. However, I did not ever want to be married to my now dead ex-husband. That was literally, if there were ever cameras in courts back in 2000, when I was literally forced to be married to my now dead ex-husband, there would be record of the judge being like, well, are you sure you want to get married to him? Literally, the judge cared more about whether or not I actually got married to my now dead ex-husband than my own biological parents and my ex-in-laws. I got lost on the way to getting married because the irony of ironies, my now dead ex-husband didn't think we should drive in the same car to the justice of the peace. And I admit this, I stupidly thought that if I could get him to to speak with my biological parents, they'd be like, no, you can't get married to her. Or not necessarily you can't, but more along the lines of, no, we don't approve of that. No, my biological mother and biological father were like, oh, you're taking her off our hands? Fantastic. Okay. And for those who didn't know at those times, my biological mother and biological father literally had a discussion when I was at Fort Sam Houston in medical hold unit, and I had called the house in Illinois to be like, hey, I want to talk about something. And my biological father said, your daughter's on the phone. And my biological mother could be overheard saying, she's your daughter. And back and forth. No, your daughter's on the phone. No, your daughter's on the phone. No, your daughter's on. No, your daughter's on the phone. So before anybody goes to defend my biological family, as far as my biological mother, biological father, and biological sister, to say that they actually did move to the state of Texas to assist my children and I, that discussion alone proves that they did not move to the state of Texas to help me with my son and my daughter. Just that conversation, well, discussion. And so, not the only time, by the way. Not before then and not after that, by the way. Many times over. So, my niece, Brieanna Marie Lopez, handed the phone with the voicemail of my now dead ex-husband and then dead ex-husband speaking to his mom on the phone in the voicemail. And Grandma Nichols, she had no problem with the yelling at that Brieanna Marie Lopez got. She did not stop that at all. And as a matter of fact, Grandma Nichols had been the only one in that family who had actually done disciplinary measures to Brieanna Marie Lopez, because Susie Marie Lopez couldn't care less about actually disciplining her daughter in a proper manner to teach her respect. And those who have had old school grandparents from, back in the day, which not just in back in the day as far as being grandparents, but also the fact that Grandma Nichols was born and raised in the Dominican Republic. I know there are people who understand that sort of disciplinary action. So, despite the fact that Brieanna Marie Lopez had played that voicemail to my daughter, I was the only one who said that that was wrong to have done. I was the only one who... And then Susie Marie Nichols Lopez got upset with me for being upset that her daughter had played a game with my daughter, knowing what was going on. Not necessarily to the level of, but having enough understanding that that was something that should not have been done. And nobody in their rightful mind would actually think that would be a good thing to do to anybody, especially a child. Not even taking in consideration the fact that my daughter had been just released from that mental health institution. However, nobody would actually, with an actual decent thought process, would be like, that's smart, to what Brieanna Marie Lopez had done. Not one person, not in their right mind. And I don't believe that there is anybody in their right mind that would look at that, know about that, or anything of that sort and be like, you know what, Brieanna, that wasn't that big of a deal. I don't see anybody genuinely being able to look in that situation and be like, yeah, that's okay. However, Susie Marie Nichols Lopez actually got upset at me for caring about my daughter, for actually defending my daughter. So, you know, the little note that was in my apartment that should not have been there, I don't care who put that there. Well, I do. I can't say I don't care. I do care. I would like to meet you so we could have a conversation. However, another aspect in regards to when I was in Selma at a doctor's appointment, this was in 2013, I had received a phone call, and I had just gotten out of a doctor's appointment. I was in front of all sorts of soldiers and veterans, and spouses and family members of. And I received a phone call from the CPS worker checking to see how everything was going, and it wasn't until about halfway through the discussion that she realized she wasn't speaking to the foster parent, she was speaking to me as far as what was going on with my daughter, and had informed me that my daughter, who had been dropped from the healthcare insurance because of the high risk, because of the amount of hospital stays after what happened at McCoy Elementary School of Carrollton Farmers Branch Independent School District of Carrollton, Texas. That she had gotten a hold of a whole bunch of kitchen knives and went and attacked a whole bunch of people in the foster care house. And so I had asked the Child Protective Services individual, I had asked, did the family know about the mental health stuff that I had given the paperwork to the Child Protective Services offices, individuals, as far as what my daughter had gone through? And she said they didn't know. So they put my daughter, who had been in and out of mental health institutions because of what happened at McCoy Elementary School, of Carrollton, Texas, of Carrollton Farmers Branch Independent School District, with people who had no idea. Now, I had been the only person who had been able to keep my daughter under control. The issue with that, though, was I could not educate her in reference to school stuff. I couldn't teach her the way she would need to be taught as far as educational stuff. I went from college algebra with trigonometry and calculus to second grade math. I knew and know my limitations in that reference. And so I wasn't told anything further about that. She didn't tell me how my daughter was. She didn't tell me if my daughter was okay. She refused to. I was told my daughter was taken into custody and put in a hospital again. But that was it. And unlike the average person who winds up going through Child Protective Services in reference to my daughter or their child and their references, I actually cared and cared. And so I wouldn't, that was literally the last resort in that reference, because I had reached out to all sorts of individuals attempting to get help for my daughter, for my son, and for myself after what occurred, not realizing at those times about hacking internet stuff and cell phone stuff. That didn't get realized until 2019, essentially, after in 2018 speaking with Criminal Investigation Division of Joint Base Lewis McCord and the Tacoma Police, both telling me to contact the Pentagon and the FBI, or the Federal Bureau of Investigation, in regards differently. The CID told me the Pentagon, and the Tacoma Police told me the FBI. However, yeah, I put that together because I realized after going to Senator Murray's office in Seattle and seeing the Medal of Honor book that she had in her office of how many names I should have actually been able to find in Washington State compared to the 56 or 57 that I actually found about the hacking and the sort of stuff that should be illegal and should not be considered acceptable. I doubt I'm the only one who believes that. That being said, if I was not told the truth in reference to what had occurred in reference to my daughter back in 2013, as far as all that sort of stuff, are you kidding me? What did you think was going to happen? Well, let me guess. You thought the same thing that my dead ex-husband and Cactus Jack, also known as Jeffrey Kirkendall Jr., along with all sorts of other individuals, that what's the big deal? I had a head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000, right? So now that you know who I am, and now that you know what I've done, what excuses do you have for that? If Mary Evangelina Nichols Osteen and her two daughters, Sandra Marie and Ariel Marie Osteen, had problems with the fact that I had to contact Mary Evangelina Nichols Osteen because of what the Child Protective Services individuals told me, well, then be mad at them, not at me. However, since Mary Evangelina Nichols Osteen was as vindictive as I remember her being, and I would guesstimate she still is, well, I guess at this point, how does it feel to know that if you had simply not thrown a temper tantrum and actually had been assistive to my daughter, she'd still be alive today? How does that feel, Susie Marie Nichols Lopez, that if you didn't allow your daughter Brieanna Marie Lopez to be the way she had been, my daughter would still be alive today? If that's the case. Because I could say I did everything I possibly could for my daughter, my son, and myself, as well as others. I doubt that those people could ever say the same. I can live without regret in regards to everything that I did possible for my son, my daughter, myself, as well as others, to make sure as best as possible they can live with their realities. As long as they're allowed to. Though I don't believe, personally, they should be allowed to at all. Personal opinion. However, I'm not the type of person that will go out of my way to have anything to do with it, to cause problems for them. They've done enough for themselves that they can live with that. I just don't ever want to see them again, or be anywhere in the vicinity of them again. Not unless it's in a court of law where they're being prosecuted for what they did. Otherwise, Susie Marie Nichols Lopez can live with what she did, and as many as she screwed over. Same thing with Mary Evangelina Nichols Osteen. Same thing. And I do still, to this day, I hold anybody who got injured because of what Mary Evangelina Nichols Osteen did in reference to after my dead ex-husband died. If they got injured because of what she said she did over in Iraq, Afghanistan, etc., I hold Mary Evangelina Nichols Osteen responsible for that. Because I told her, let me handle it. I know who I have to speak with. Don't get in my way. Because you're going to make it worse if you do it your way, because you don't know how to speak with the different individuals, and you don't know the proper way to go up the chain of command. Plus, she only cared about her dead brother instead of all of the different individuals that could be affected. So if anybody got injured because of what Mary Evangelina Nichols Osteen did when she was in Georgia, I hold her accountable, personally, in my opinion. I have a feeling, though, I would not be the only one. And if she influenced her two daughters, Sandra Marie Osteen and Ariel Marie Osteen, to be just the same way as her, well, then she passed that on to her daughters by teaching them wrongly that way to be. And if they had caused problems to my Medal of Honor art project, that only perpetuates the exact same thing that I am to see. because of, hypothetically, Mary Evangelina Nichols Osteen's personal problems with the fact that a Chief Warrant Officer 3 had direct ordered an E7 not to be at an E5's funeral, and had brought up and pointed to actual photographic evidence of my dead ex-husband, her dead brother / spiritual husband, wearing stolen valor. And on a complete other side note, which I didn't put this together back then, in, 2011, I went to speak on the phone. I had contacted my then boyfriend, Patrick Kennedy's ex-girlfriend, and she had told me about how she had heard I was outing people. I didn't have the time or the patience to do that. Because first off, there was no reason for me to. Second, because I'm just not that type of person. Not if there's not a safety aspect of, for example, Deloitte, Bank of America sort of situation. However, Mary Evangelina Nichols Osteen, she thought that was a fun game to play with other people's lives. Which, when I met her the first time of the 3, and she had told me that she did that, I told her that sounded wrong and disgusting. So, I know this is a temper tantrum tirade after such a good night that I had. I did. Last night, I had a good night. I had a very difficult time finding the words because of how much awe I had been struck by. As far as all the different people that I got to meet and be around and then see and just wonder how they could be so strong as to be able to do what they did and overcome what they had. The amount of support for the current president of the United States of America, that whole thing, I had a fantastic time. Again, I did have difficulties putting it into words because I have difficulties putting things into words at times. I don't deny that. I've never denied that after waking up from my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000, the coma. Whether that's typing it on the techie device, though that has to do with being zapped partially, as well as the issues with words. It's very difficult when I'm holding the cell phone stuff. It's easier when I have a keyboard that's not attached to the laptop. It's one of those separate keyboards. Issues I have with technology are what they are. Despite that irony. But yeah. Hopefully that makes sense. And that can be taken care of. You guys have a good one. Comment, like, share, and subscribe to my official YouTube channel.